Looks like it's time. We're watching part 2, section 2 of the Malcolm Bendall Lectures. MSAART Plasmoid Tech. What was that? Molten salt or something? Something that was like, oh. The Holy Grail of Science now manifest. Model of the elements. Okay. So that's what we're checking out. Link to this page will be in the description. It's even got the Tesla. I don't think I noticed the Tesla coil. Literally just a like part of me.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for joining us. It's Malcolm Bendall. I'm sharing with you my overall research from 50 years of work and 7 years of...
Molten sea arc atomic reconstruction technology. Okay. I felt a little like, well, maybe I should know that acronym more readily, but no. Okay.
both collating the information into understandable diagrams and also into schematics and into real life application uses of our MSAT plasmoid technology. This is the second section, which deals with the very complex solution to the problem that Einstein and Tesla both agreed on, was that there was a need to unify everything. And until we could unify everything, that is crystal form, color, sound...
That's just science, though. That's the whole objective. Didn't need to name drop. I feel like name dropping unnecessarily just points to trying to like gain traction by the presence.
time and angles. There would be no...
Which perhaps is kind of ironic considering I am reacting to this, which is going on presently. And I noticed that that's a trend. It's a little under the radar, I would say, that this came out. I doubt this has been very inspected. I saw Randall Carlson posted on Twitter about it, and I checked today, and there were like very few comments in response. And it was something that was like, for a real brief moment in time, pretty focused on by the general public, but I don't think people really notice that this is out yet. But like, people care, so I mean, I guess I'm like, in a way, attempting to benefit in a similar way, so maybe it's only just what is, but at the same time, like, I'm not going, like, this is relevant to my research and the things I talk about to see if what he has to say has merit, because I do that. Unlike people who don't consider my research and don't respond to it, and thus don't do that. I actually do that, and here's me doing that, so it's not really trying to get traction. Really, in some way, I view it as, well, I did discover the theory of everything, regardless if anyone knows it yet. So, I mean, certainly some people know. Appreciate it, guys. Appreciate it. But, and gals. But, it's not general public knowledge, so, like, when it becomes general public knowledge, like, anything I talk about, I'm gonna give attention to and not take from at some point. Like, there's gonna be an additional benefit for me talking about things that's how I view it. I know people are like people view it as, well, how many followers do you have? So then you're what they call a grifter kind of concepts. I believe that's the right term. Let's see. I believe grifter meaning. Oh no, that's not. I was someone who like rides the coattail. Anyway, that's these are so long. I don't want to spend too much time philosophizing and being me, but
Advancement of our civilization. But the person that could do that, according to Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein, would have then the matrix to provide limitless energy for our society.
let's go back to what he was saying.
To real life application uses of our MSAT plasmoid technology. This is the second section, which deals with the very complex solution to
Went too far.
that Einstein and Tesla both agreed on,
Yeah.
was that there was a need to unify everything. And until we could unify everything, that is crystal form, color, sound, time, and angles, there would be no advancement.
Crystal form, color, sound, time, and angles. That's an interesting list. I don't want to hate on it or maybe underappreciate it. Should demonstrate my underappreciation of it, maybe. I mean, I certainly. Maybe it's good that there's to just include them, but I feel like physics as a study, like, really encapsulates all of them, or largely, to a point where it's more just physics that he's saying. But I like and appreciate that he pointed those things out, which are, anyway.
Of our civilization. But the person that could do that, according to Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein, would have then the matrix to provide limitless energy for our society, which obviously is a new industrial revolution, but on a scale really that was inconceivable until this was brought forward, and in the last decade, especially the last 7 years, where the applications were tested on modern machines. So basically, those applications are based on the model of the elements, and we're about to show you here now the model of the elements. Now, there's a lot to this diagram, and I'd encourage people to sit down and go through and comprehend it. It's like a mechanism to calculate.
If he just fucking shows it and doesn't make it so I understand what he's really getting at from this video, and essentially says, I encourage you sit down and understand it without even explaining it, I'm going to be pretty disappointed if it's kind of talking around it. Like, I see it, I honestly appreciate its presence in this all. I think this might be one of the more compelling aspects of it. Not to say that it's true, just like, I appreciate the effort in attempting to do something of this nature, to a point where there might be some merit in at least some recognition of something not yet recognized in consensus understanding that, like, should be, because it is, maybe it's possible. Okay.
The resonant frequency of all things, and having that knowledge means that you can then manipulate time and matter. So basically, we have here in the center, we have the three things that probably that are the most relevant to us is on Earth is the Earth itself. We stand on the moon, which is a bit of a if you like the old metronomes for music, the moon is a metronome to keep the planet in balance and keep everything on the planet in balance, because time itself that's described both in the Sanskrit text as 311040, which is Brahma's all time, and I'm just focusing on the numbers. You'll notice in all my dissertations that I ignore the amplitude because I'm only interested in the number. And it's only the product of some of the numbers, so I'm not even interested in the slightest what the order of those numbers are, whether it's 864, which is the diameter of the sun being 864,000 miles, and the amount of seconds a day, which is 86,400 seconds. That zero I can explain why that difference is, but the main thing is that number is what's important. It's also the same number as the moon square, and the moon plots out in its orbit. It moves its own diameter every hour, which means in 24 hours it's moved the 518,400 seconds of the 6 days of creation in the Bible. So this is really critically important because time is mutable. You can reverse time or accelerate time. And so therefore, that being so, and the light being only a constant at the 0 point, is a social constant. So that means that because matter is fundamentally a frequency which is based on time, and the sun is a frequency imprinting device to change ether to matter. If you look at this, my statement here that time is the mold in which matter is formed, and I go through all the time numbers here, and that time itself is 4D. So if you think about coming from the sun, which is ether, which is 5D, right? Then you need to transition to matter, which you need 4D, which is time, and you create 3D, which is basically the fact you've taken something that's direct current, added a timing to it, and made it alternating current. The same way as your battery turns the starter motor over, which is AC, you lose 10% of the energy in doing that.
From like a technical research paper standpoint, like it's the concept of antecedent basis, or certainly in patent examining and probably just research papers, like if you say something antecedent basis, the requirement that all words must be explained, or wait, maybe pardon me, wrong thing. Patent examining, molding into just one word. I remember that word. That's the one. That might be the one, but I don't know. Where I think that like that would be what we would apply, is that it lacked antecedent basis. If it said like claim one, the thing, instead of being like a thing, where the thing, blah 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 blah, like introducing the thing. That's my point. He didn't really introduce whatever the fuck he just said. No offense. Like, because like my videos kind of do that too, but I literally have a chain of events that dates back to 2014 of videos that I'm like, what do you want from me? Like, I can't just start you at square one every video. That would be ridiculous. Like, go back. Guess what? I started at square one, and I'm here now, and already whatever he just said made no sense. In terms of like, maybe it makes sense to him if he had explained it, but he literally did not explain it, and kind of spoke it in a way where like, this is like something we just understand, and you should understand too, but I'm not gonna explain it, even though that's like why I'm doing these videos. Like, it doesn't quite compute. We'll see. Let's keep going.
Focusing on the numbers, you'll
This is fine, although I mean, this also makes me think of an ammonite. Like, there's probably more of an ammonite, like, structure that needs to be recognized that doesn't get encapsulated by things of this nature.
I can explain why that difference is, but the main thing is that number is what's important. It's also the same number as the moon square, and the moon plots out in its orbit. It moves its own diameter and is mutable. You can reverse time or accelerate time.
Okay,
And so
this part.
therefore, that being so, and light being only a constant at the zero.
I generally agree that time is mutable and can be reversed and so on. Although, how exactly that, like, happens in an observer, like, you have to change the observer's time. That's a little more difficult than changing, like, a particle's experience of time in a way where things are more just physics time and like literally everything is interacting where time is going in both directions right now, where antimatter has just time going the other way. And there's certainly ways like the Earth's expansion where radioactive decay paints a picture of rapid time passing, but it almost is like maybe the time actually did pass, but in our observation, it was at a rate of like human seconds, 1, 2, 3. That was not that long, but in geological time, it was hundreds of millions of years versus like maybe thousands of years, let's say, of the reality of the situation at most. So hundreds of millions of years of pseudo time, but maybe it actually occurred and it just like, but our time, our perception of time didn't change. It's just within the universe, this space opened where 500 million years of time passed in like a different dimension that was like due to the energies present, that even though to us it looks like lava flows and like intense floods, that maybe there was like a dimension that like it looked like hundreds of millions of years. Maybe reverse time, I don't know. So like I'm open to the concept that time is mutable. I'm fine with that. What I'm not like understanding is what he then goes on to start to say here. So that's good. Okay,
0 point
let's go
is
back a little bit. Of course.
is mutable. You
Okay.
can reverse time or accelerate time, and so therefore, that being so, and light being only a constant at the 0 point, is the social constant. So that means that because matter is fundamentally a frequency which is based on time, and the sun is a frequency imprinting device to change ether to matter. If you look at this,
Okay, let's go back again. Sun does in fact change ether to matter. I would agree.
you can reverse time or accelerate time, and so therefore, that being so, and light being only a constant at the 0 point, is
Light being only a constant at the 0 point. Also, I would agree, and I would say that 0 point is like the equilibrium of basically, as I've said in the past, at the literal frequency of green is the balance point in our perception, where being composed of the particles we're composed of within the infinite spectrum of particles relative to our atoms, green light is the balance point, which is probably really where zero energy or the 0 point is energetically placed within the spectrum. Like it's not just like zero, it's like a point within the infinite spectrum. Green light. Talked about that in the past, no idea where.
Is mutable. You can reverse time or accelerate time. And so therefore, that being so, and light being only a constant at the 0 point, is...
I mean, it's kind of a constant everywhere. It's just, I guess he's more so saying with the speed of light, c is actually representing in a vacuum, which is actually the balance of green energy. So that to me is what he's getting at, is that c is at the 0 point energy, which is kind of in a vacuum. And yeah, I would agree with that. But like it's constant everywhere, kind of like if in this circumstance, then this, like always, which is why like if in this equilibrium that is like everywhere, then light travels c, but then like in other mediums, like on Earth, it varies, like in water. It even varies in magnetic fields, but it varies like to a equation of balance that would make it like always there constantly, where it is a constant. So like it's calling it like the speed of light c is really just like a like stability point in our perception that just is significant in our perception. So it like looks more like a stable point than other speeds of light, but it's really just where things stabilize. Okay, things balance. So like it's basically, the way I look at it is literally a pixel for every pixel is filled with a photon that's like moves around, bumps into one another so completely that it's literally just perfectly a balance of uh, of particles within the waves. Like at some point too subtle it becomes wave-like entirely, and at another point too large particles they become particulate entirely. But at the balance point there's like a perfect balance of particle to space, making like waves of particles that are like, that's what the universe around us as we see it stabilizes at energetically to be this place. Okay, one more time.
And so therefore, that being so, and light being only a constant at the 0 point, is a social constant. So that means that because matter is fundamentally
Okay, maybe saying social constant encapsulates well enough
frequency,
all my rambling.
which is based on time, and the sun is a frequency imprinting device to change ether to matter. If we look at this, my statement here that time is the mould in which matter is formed, and I go through all the time numbers here, and that time itself is 4D. So if you think about coming from the sun, which is ether, which is 5D, right? Then you need to transition to matter, which you need 4D, which is time, and you create 3D, which is basically the fact you've taken something that's direct current, added a timing to it, and made it alternating current. The same way as your battery turns the starter motor over, which is AC, you lose 10% of the energy in doing that. And if you have your alternator in your car charging your battery, you're going from AC to DC, you lose 10% of that power. So this is a fundamental observable fact. So, but when you've got time itself, and you understand what it is and what its metric is, and this is in the notes that are in the Strike Foundation .earth, showing that actually time itself is the product of equal and opposite numbers in a mirror image. That is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6, mirrored as 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is 518,400. Now,
Oh, dear Lord.
in a mirror image, that is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6, mirrored as 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is 518,400. Now, 8 times 9 times 10 times 10 times 9 times 8 is also 518,400. So it is the only number that is a product of equal and opposite numbers. Yep. So and in the first 1 to 10. So, and basically, obviously, you could multiply 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6, leave out 7, which represents the ether, and times 8 times 9 times 10 is also 518,400. And these numbers and their octaves.
Did he say obviously? Did he say obviously?
It's in the notes that are in the Strike Foundation .earth, showing that actually time itself is the product of equal and opposite numbers in a mirror.
Dude. Really needs, like, you got this pointer.
Image, that is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6, mirrored as 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is 518,400. Now, 8 times 9 times 10 times 10 times 9 times 8 is also 518,400.
8 times 9 times 10. Wait. Like, what? What is happening?
So, but when you've got time
What the
and
fuck?
you understand what it is, what its metric is, and this is in the notes that are in the Strike Foundation .earth, showing that actually time itself is the product of equal and opposite numbers in a mirror image. That is 1 times.
I thought he said that. Okay, let's see. Oh my god.
In the notes that are in the Strike Foundation .earth, showing that actually time itself is the product of equal and opposite numbers in a mirror image. That is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6, mirrored as 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is 518,400. Now, 8 times 9 times 10 times 10 times 9 times 8.
What in the fuck, dude? 6 times 5 is 30. Times 4 is 120. Times 3 is 360. Times 2 is 720. Times 1 is 720. Times 60 again, maybe? Maybe he's multiplying it by 60 seconds. and maybe by 24 hours. I have no idea what's happening. What the fuck? Is this a straight troll? He's gonna get a huge movement of people who believe him. But he's like, 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 is 582,000. Like, what the fuck?
But when you've got time itself, and you understand what it is, and what its metric is, and this is in the notes that are in the Strike Foundation .earth, showing that actually time itself is the product of equal and opposite numbers in a mirror image. That is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6, mirrored as 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is 518,400. Now, 8 times 9 times 10 times 10 times 9 times 8 is also 518,400.
Oh, multiplied again by itself. Please tell me multiplied by itself. 720 times 720. Ah, there it is. There it is. So the mirror aspect. Okay. Okay. Pardon me, sir. Did not explain it very well. That it was doing that.
Percent of the energy in doing that. And if you have your alternator on your .earth showing that actually time itself is the product of equal and opposite numbers in a mirror image, that is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6, mirrored as 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is 518,400. Now, 8 times 9 times 10 times 10 times 9 times 8 is also 518,400. So,
Okay.
the only number
Okay.
that is a product of equal and opposite numbers. Yep. And in the first 1 to 10. So, and basically, obviously, you could multiply 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6. Leave out 7, which represents the ether, and times 8 times 9 times 10 is also 518,400. And these numbers and their octaves and derivatives of them is what Randall Carlson is actually identified are the fundamental building blocks, not only of cities, but also the fundamental building blocks in sacred geometry, which goes to the fundamentals of how creation is formed and the fundamental principles and fundamental relationships. The appearance of, for example, a cube, internal angle is 2,160 degrees, is also the diameter of the moon. These are not coincidences. The pyramid is a 43,200 scale model of our planet. So these are not coincidences. And so if you put all these things together, all these numbers together, and all the sacred ancient measuring systems together, and you look at them, what this model of the elements does is recognizes one fundamental key, and that key was really the biggest breakthrough in science in modern times, and that is recognizing the paradox between if you have all time, like in 24 hours, if you put a 24-hour clock, which is on this diagram, you have 24 hours here, because it's the most important thing, and the rest of the relationships go off that, but the most important thing is 24 hours and 0 hours occur at the same point. That means that if you take light going through a prism, you can see that light splits up into its frequencies. So therefore, if you have all light, that is all those colours, and we used to do this at primary school, we used to colour in a little wheel with our little colouring pens, and we spin it, and you see it turns white. Because if you have all colours, you have no colours. If you have all time, you have no time at all. So this is the paradox, and this is what our society lost. through ignoring sacred geometry, through not learning from the wisdom which was transmitted through all our ancient documents from our forebears, so that wisdom was enshrined in, for example, so we wouldn't lose it, in the pyramids. You know, pyramids is an enshrining of ancient knowledge, which is the basis for us to move ahead. So if you knew that the whole planet was going to be wiped out, the first thing I would do is build a pyramid, so that any survivors could finally come and find the pyramid and say, okay, the knowledge in here is the same knowledge we have. They knew the circumference of the planet. They knew, you know, the size, the distance.
The Earth expanded, so they were living on a Earth that did not have the same circumference. So they perhaps knew what it would be. I mean, yeah, perhaps, but they certainly did not know, base their pyramids off of the circumference of the Earth that they lived on, because the Earth expanded. So there's that side of the pyramids. Plus, there's many pyramids. That's one of the things I don't like about the pyramids and the sacred geometry kind of an analysis of it. Is it's almost too broad stroke. Like there's a lot to this. Maybe like like he was saying, I would make the pyramid to encapsulate this understanding. But I really don't think they did it for that. They ain't doing it for that. They were making a fucking power plant. They knew it was for that. Yeah, it was a great side effect. You know, when shit hits the fan, they'll be able to look at how bomb we was and be like, we wish we were like them. And then they'll be like us, and then we back here. But that wasn't why they did it. They did it because they were like, you know, this struggle thing fucking sucks. What you guys want to do? You want to struggle, or you want to take a moment here and live peacefully for a while? Yeah, maybe it don't work forever. It's just literally a pyramid, the ultimate pyramid scheme. But you know, give us a while. Yeah, future, they'll have to deal with it. The ultimate kick in the can down the road was way back then. It's not even like our government now printing the cash. Not even close to that kind of kick in the can down the road. They were like, you know, struggle sucked on that last planet we were on. Let's just make some pyramids. Dude. There's so much better shit to do than struggle. We can struggle like doing shit, not like for the sake of struggle because we don't got pyramids, dude. Let's just make the pyramids. Okay, that's the kind of shit that was going on. It was not. You know, these future people would really benefit from us just making this structure mathematically just like boom, just for them only. Like, dudes, they did it for themselves. Just think about it. Think about you, think about others, and think about what you think they did for us or them.
The poles. So if they knew all that, then where did that knowledge come from? You know, and that's where the questions that start with Graham Hancock saying, wait a minute, you've got all these civilizations, they all have a base of knowledge, but what is that knowledge? And if you see in those civilizations that this is not, you know, if you go to the Mayans, this is very similar, of course, to the Mayan calendar, but it's also a key because if everything is the paradox between having...
He really has not even attempted to explain the data on the thing and go through. He's really talking around it. I'm going to be honest. I don't have high hopes that he's going to make me understand this by the end of this video.
Everything and nothing. And if a light goes through a prism and is split up to its component parts, And if you spin those component parts, you can put them back together again. Then, if that's the case, and light's frequency, then you can do the same with the elements. You can split them into their different planes, which is, you know...
Talks too soon, motherfucker. Bro, we got 25 minutes to go. You gonna gamble like that? You gonna say?
Later in this presentation, in other sections, we go into that. But suffice to say, for the elements, that we've plotted the elements here with their monad, diatride, tetrad form, with their frequencies, which are both in sound and color. So you have the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You have the colors that match those sounds, and you have your great...
I'm gonna be honest with you, in terms of the sounds, as cool as that is, there's a lot more to sounds than A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And the sharps and flats, like, it's not like, that's just kind of something that people arrived at some point. It's really not fundamental. It's important to know that is not a fundamental thing. It is an arrived at, agreed upon structure, not the same. So to apply it in this setting, while it looks nice, really does not have the rigors of making sure that this even applies in that type of way. It just fits well. A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Here, which is 25,920 years, which is the precession of the equinox, which maps out all the star signs. Again, this model brings all those things together. It is a unification model. It's surprising to some people. It unifies even our culture, because it unifies the truth of that each one of these Leo, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Aries. Now, these in time periods are again your 2,160. And that's why I said the moon's a timekeeper. Literally, the moon's diameter is the timekeeper for our zodiac signs. But if you put them all into this model, it makes perfect sense. And the key thing here that completely, blows away the modern scientific attitude is that why didn't someone identify the fact that the sun, which is such a big part of our, physically it's, the protons, over 99% of our whole solar system. So its melting point is minus 259.2. So that being the case, therefore it determines the great year, 25,920. So, and the sun, is therefore determining the frequency of the elemental, the most abundant element on the sun is determining the frequency of the movement of our whole solar system, which if you think about it makes perfect sense, because surely it would. And so you also have the moon is traveling its own diameter.
Not to say I agree with the totality of what he said, but I do agree that, like, there would probably be a resonance tie and relationship.
Yeah, well.
And not to say I disagree with also, I just didn't, like, fully, like, understand well enough to have an opinion, except for just to say I generally like that kind of concept.
In 12 hours, well, in 24 hours it's traveling the 51,840 miles, but in 12 hours, which we have a 12-hour clock, so a 24-hour clock, but that 12 hours is important because it symbolizes the same as the disc, the outside disc of the clock represents ether or direct current, and the hand, that's the radius, is actually scribing out the alternating current and the rate of that, which gives you your frequency, this full frequency sweep here, which is again the paradox between everything and nothing. but identifying that, being able to identify everything as ether and matter as being, the sun being an imprinting time, therefore matter is frequency. So in the absence of frequency is ether. Adding frequency to ether gives you matter. Now, knowing that is important because, and this diagram is important because here, and I think it's interesting that
ether in the absence of frequency is ether. With frequency is matter. That's just not appreciating that ether is particulate. Everything's particulate. So if we're talking about the sun like as a system, then we should also recognize ether as particulate. And just like literally the same thing across fractal scale. And just some thoughts, not to critique too much. I don't want to, just for the sake of it.
So in the absence of frequency is ether. Adding frequency to ether gives you matter.
I mean, you're just adding matter and then getting matter by managing. Really the objective is to like channel in, blow the balloon up, and like freeze it, hard shell, and then like have it be stable and not like so like you're still putting matter in. Like to blow a balloon up is air, which is particles. It's just unrecognized particles when it gets down to the scale of ether, where like we don't even recognize ether to exist collectively. Like consensus does not acknowledge ether, even though it is. And then the understanding of ether is certainly a broad spectrum.
Now, knowing that is important because, and this diagram is important because here, and I think it's interesting that when you go out to everything and you put, like for example, the sun's diameter on this diagram and splitting it up into these sacred geometry, that is, these sacred numbers, that is that if you have split a circle into your 360 degrees, and then you take which is 360 degrees, you split that up into 64 segments. Therefore, you can plot and get from the fractions of each one of these numbers divided by 64 sections. You'll get, for example, 24 hours here, but when you come around to carbon, which is here, which is us, which is hydrocarbon is here hydrogen, which is obviously determines the great year and also its phase change. And you come to carbon here, hydrocarbon, which is us, and then you come to time and you look at time.
He said obviously determines the great year. Oh dear Lord. It's very reminiscent of a lecture in quantum mechanics, honestly. You can see my reactions to like 2 lectures of quantum mechanics where I just gave up. So you guys are just jumping over shit you just casually introduce. Then there's color, and also there's hello, welcome to quantum mechanics. I know that all you know is classical up until now, generally speaking. However, there are quirks, and moving forward, there are color spins. It's not really a spin, it's just color. It's not really color, though, either. We just use words that don't make any sense now because we don't make any sense now. So, we just choose kind of what feels right. Just it feels right. Color. Pink. Kind of reminds me of that, where then they like move on. If you watch quantum mechanics lectures, they'll bring some shit out, kind of casually talk about it, like, okay, introduction to quarks, and then like lecture two. So the quarks do blah 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 blah. Now like the quarks are at that point. By lecture two, quarks are. So, okay, now we know that quarks exist, since I explained it with one experiment that could be explained other ways, but we didn't bother to figure that out because we figured quarks were. That was nice because it added the benefit of us having quarks as the part of the model. Data gets explained in this instance here that we found to be most relevant to introduce the quark, and so quarks exist. And so now that we've introduced the great year based off of hydrogen, obviously, I feel like that same vibe occurred when he said obviously. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I know it can also be a human thing. Like, obviously, he's not done this before. Like, I understand the like apprehension in being in front of a camera and recording, and like it certainly can play into things when people are genuine and make it so they say things that
The carbon is here hydrogen, which is obviously determines the great year and also its phase change. And you come to carbon here, hydrocarbon, which is us, and then you come to time and you look at time. Well, there's 6 there. Well, there's 6 plane
hydrocarbon, which is us.
to make the cube, and we're cubical. You go up 3
It's interesting. I kind of generalize that we're made of atoms, but I like the focus on like the actual, like what we're made of. I guess oxygen.
60 degrees. You come around here, it's 90 degrees. Well, the cube's made up of the corners at 3 times 90 degrees, so 270 degrees, and as I said, 2,160. All these numbers, the 2,160, just to show how perfect this whole system is, which is shown down here. They're all multiples of 9 because God's handspan is 9 inches. So this is not anything that's coincidental, right? So, and if you look at the sizes of these and realize they're all multiples of 9, all the moon size, the diameter obviously, the radius, and the distances between the sun and the earth is an average of 108 times the diameter of the sun. The distance between the moon and the earth is 108 times the diameter of the earth. The largest man-made structure in the world is not the pyramid, it's Angkor Wat. It's also, I would argue, is also currently still the biggest city ever built in the world. It still exists, it's just not inhabited, and it's under a lot of vegetation, but LiDAR has shown the size of that city. So basically, this integrates disparate data sets. So you can take, if you realize that everything relates to the 0 point, then you can take any number, like light 144, you go around here and to your plane which carbon exists on, well then you've got the 144 is 36.
He's saying 0 point in a totally different way to what it actually, like from a physics standpoint, means. Basically, hydrogen appears to be on the 0 point. This whole top line is the 0 point, I guess, in his view. Maybe. Maybe it has its own fractal, like, even though green is like our 0 point, like, the more like left right divide of the universe totality, like two sides, if we could divide like above and below balanced from our point of view, it would be at green. That's how I see it essentially. But even though that, maybe there's octaves of different balance points that are essentially like this line, and like green is also on this line.
6, which is talking about your 360 degrees, your 0 degrees, and everything. So
Although he doesn't have a green on the line, but that would make sense.
it's talking about the 360 degree 0, which is a paradox. When you have all frequencies, you have no frequencies. So, for example, David's harp that's laid down flat, which we call a piano, we have middle C. Well, middle C is important because you have 24 hours in a day, and multiply by the sun's frequency is 11.11 years. So therefore, if it's 24 hours in a day and 11.11 years, you multiply that together, you get 266. You divide that by 2 to get your frequency, and that would give 1.333. That is the ratio of 16, which is matter.
Oh my god, I hate this kind of. Even if it's like valid, I fucking hate it. Where it's just 2 times 4 times 8 divided by 7, then you get 16, you get 4, and then you got 7. I mean, it's a brilliant. Sorry, dude. It's just like, it's so hard to follow, even if it's got a validity to it.
Years. So therefore, if it's 24 hours in a day and 11.11 years, you multiply that together, you get 266. You divide that by 2 to get your frequency, and that would give 1.333. That is the ratio of 16, which is matter, to ether, which is 12. That's why you have the 12 hours, in your
Wasn't it? What? Aether is 12? Like, I feel like he's just saying shit sometimes. You can't just, like, say ether is 12. That doesn't make any damn sense.
The day is split up into 12 and 12, because on our clocks we normally have 12 and 12. We have 24-hour clocks, but the point is there's a knowledge there that these things are split up. So basically, when you go up through this table, when you have a look at it, and I'll probably, just before I go into the next slide, I'll point out that ether is direct current, but these dimensional numbers are very, very important. There's 144,000. If you divide, which is the light number, which is again in all these ancient texts, which is 144,000 enlightened ones in Revelation, divided by, for example, ether, you get your 25,920 great year, which is also the melting point phase change of hydrogen.
Divided by ether. Isn't this the ether number, though? And 5555 something else on his thing.
If you divide it by time, you get 324, which is a shuffling of the sun's radius. If you divide it by matter, you get 43,200, which is the amount of seconds in a day at the summer solstice. That's why all these temples that everyone's saying, oh, I wonder who built them, I wonder why they're there. Well, I think it's simply saying, in part, one part of the knowledge they're imparting is that there's 43,200 seconds in a day at the summer solstice. So the same at the
I really don't know if that's even true. Like, maybe that's true. It's the same thing. The earth expanded. It's very important. Oh my god, it's so important. Like, these people were not alive on this earth. They were alive pre-expansion. Pre-diluvian, or whatever they say. Antediluvian? on the other side of the flood, which was before the Earth expanded. So they didn't live on the same Earth, really, and it probably did have 360 actual days. And whether or not its days had exactly what we would say to be 24 hours of 60 seconds is unclear, really.
That the pyramid is a 43,200 scale model of the world. They're giving you knowledge from past generations because they wanted to pass that forward to current generations, and actually, even though we think,
I mean, that is, I'll just reiterate, like, it's highly an assumption. Highly an assumption. I mean, clearly the pyramids have, like, scorch marks inside where it's burned by electrical currents and things that suggest it was a power plant. Like, it was had a purpose, and maybe its purpose required those types of construction, like fine-tuned characteristics that he's pointing to, but they certainly didn't do it for the sake of it. Just this knowledge is too important. Let's put it in stone.
it was so smart and would have advanced so much.
After the fact, yeah, after the flood, after the fact, after the flood, after the flood, then yes, they were like, this knowledge pretty important. We should probably save it everywhere we can. Is anyone alive anymore? I don't even know. I'll just build these things that I can build with the knowledge I have as an individual here or a small group. There's not a society anymore that's able to do all these things that we were able to do. We should probably make sure we can do it again by like keeping it stored. Like those instances, yeah. But when the pyramids were being built, it's kind of like now, like building skyscrapers. Like you think after like chaos, shit hits the fan. Like let's say it were to happen, like there would be a great flood that wiped out most people. Like how soon until the next skyscraper goes up? It's gonna be a while, dudes. Even if people like know how, they don't give a shit to build fucking skyscrapers when there's not really that much population. If a flood were to happen, let's say like if the same type of thing were to happen now, like if for sure no one would be doing for the sake of it. So like I just I just find that line of reasoning it's too assumption based, like of why they did the thing when clearly it strongly looks like they had an actual purpose to the structures. Like they're not just doing it, dudes. Everything we do has serves some purpose, and like we build a fence, it's for a wall. I mean, if you want to say the purpose is to communicate with like a distant future that you anticipate to have lost all of this knowledge, like it's just not grabbing the full totality of why someone would do that.
Much without technology.
For certain, they would only do it like that would only be a side effect, and they would know it to be a side effect and just wouldn't give a shit.
At what cost? We've lost that knowledge, and what I've tried to do is, with the help of Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, with Graham Hancock's work, with Randall Carlson's work on sacred geometry, how can we rediscover these ancient?
Not to say wouldn't give a shit, it just wouldn't be about us. It would be about them. That's why they did it for themselves, because they're like alive then, so they wanted the pyramid then. Like they knew about us. Like there was a time we weren't, and there will be a time when others will be. But like they weren't like, let's just invest all this energy for no reason except for to tell them things that will be saved.
And put them into a matrix whereby you can utilize them to create energy devices, pumping devices, use it as motive power, use it as atomic battery. So So, and use this knowledge here that every school child would be able to see that, you know, each of these dimensional numbers, you know, if you take 144,000 and divide by the melting point of hydrogen,
Fucking weird.
get 555, which is the ether, which is exactly right. Because what you're actually saying is, if I take light and divide it by hydrogen's phase change point, I actually get the number of ether, which is the fifth dimension number. So that covers that. Ether is direct current energy at rest.
What the fuck?
This one here is the DC to matter converter. So what we're saying here is the sun is actually a imprinting device of time. So therefore, and I proved with the 43,200 that
Proved. Holy shit, with the 43,200. Holy shit.
is direct relationship to the radius of the sun. And if you take
Like, I can kind of see where he's coming from if he really, like, believes that's sufficient. But numerology in and of itself is not sufficient. He needs technical specifics that he's just not going into whatsoever.
these numbers here, which are all to do with the
like a theory, like actual theory, not like a scientific theory that really references technical specifics that aren't just kind of general numbers. Like, is this even true? Like, exactly true? Exactly. Let's see. Seconds in an Earth day. Probably, oh yeah, that one's obviously gonna be the actual number. Miles, sun diameter, that's probably a better one. Yeah, like, this isn't even the same number. This would multiply to a basically 380 at the end. So, not the same number. And the mean radius, which would multiply to 900, 864,900. So it's kind of just like, we'll just drop those numbers and just generalize it to being exactly in line with these other numbers. I don't agree with that method. I mean, I can see how it maybe, if he's like, its resonance is kind of like approaching and it, like, explaining the variations and things, but just like the numerology thing.
the diameter of the sun, like there's 86,400 seconds in a day. There's 8,640 is the moon square. That is, you take moon's diameter times 4 and make a square, squaring the circle. Then that, and if you take the sun square, which is 3,456,000, and divide that into 16 segments, which is the base here is 16. There's 16 segments, 32 segments, and then 64 points, 32 planes, because you can actually you look at them as three separate segments within each other. Then if you take the 3456 divided by 16, is exactly the moon number again, 216. Now that's 216,000, but the amplitude doesn't really matter. the numbers that matter. So you divide the 3, 4,
When you set the numbers right, though.
5, 6 by the phase change point of hydrogen, and you get your 1.33, which is your aperture, which is
I'm literally moving on and seeing if he talks about. Unless in that little thing he's talking about here, at no point does he actually explain this. He does not explain this. I'm not like understanding it now. Let's go look at it. Like I literally have to go look at it to even know half of what's on it. So he didn't explain it whatsoever. Hydrogen, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. I gotta stop before I fuck up. I mean, what do you mean I don't know all the elements? What do you mean? I'm brilliant, dudes. I know all the elements up to the ones that I just. Anyway, doesn't matter. Okay, let's see. That one. Okay, I mean, I'm not. Just not convinced. I have no idea what's happening. He's just kind of put these in. Winter, spring, summer, autumn. The Earth has 2 winters and springs and summers and autumns in each hemisphere, though. Time is the mold in which matter is formed. No. First of all, nothing is the mold in which matter is formed, literally. So time emerges from nothing, as well as matter. Everything emerges from nothing, I would say. Pardon me. Maybe I'm wrong, and it's actually all is one, always, eternally, and there never will be a nothing to emerge from because all is one. And nothing is just kind of given an honorary place as a focal point in everything because it's just non-existent and doesn't, just sorry, buddy. Sorry for your not getting a chance to live out existence. Nothing. We really would like to honor you anyway by making everything about you. Or maybe it's just like the nature of reality. I don't know. Like even this is literally a circle, a zero, a bunch of zeros. One, two. Oh, I see. Totally skipped helium. It's like, why does lithium seem wrong? Inert. Why does he even have hydrogen here? It's not even inert. Then he just seems to stop the elements. Like the elements literally stop. I guess he just says X, Y, Z, and it's meaning it continues, but you kind of got to continue it, dude. You can't just put X, Y, Z. I know I didn't, Like, I stopped here myself because like this is tough. I'm trying to literally look at it from the angle of neutrons instead of from the angle of protons, basically, to see if there's something to it with currents passing through and like figuring out what shapes the mounds take based on currents passing through. So, like, it's not the simplest task to continue, but over here, like, he's really just needs to keep doing it. I guess maybe somewhere else, at least somewhere else, like, have both. I understand that it's a lot of data to put out when you want to put all this other things out here that apparently are important in some way. C sharp. Yeah, like, not convinced by any of this.
Confirm this. Now, there's a lot more in this to go into, but I think we'll just go to the next slide here.
I think we'll just not do the whole purpose of these lectures. We'll just glance. You could figure it out on your own, just like you would have been doing already if you cared enough about what I had to say. So this way, I spoke and made a video, and you didn't understand and couldn't really hate me for it because you didn't really know what the fuck I was talking about because I didn't clarify whatsoever. Boom. What you gonna do? Your move.
Which
It's fucking your move, everyone.
I will
I'm sorry, Malcolm. I love you. I appreciate it, even if he's like incorrect. Because I'm probably incorrect too in my own ways. So I appreciate it. I appreciate helping. Like, I think he is actually genuinely trying. I'll give him that. For, which is good because a lot of like con artist type of things are more so going for the con of the sell. Like, I really think he's put the time and energy into really thinking about this. And this is his actual general work and interpretation of things, but like whether or not it's true is a whole different story. Like, that's a good start that he does appear genuine in his efforts. But again, like, it doesn't matter if someone's genuine in terms of like whether or not they're right or wrong. Of course, it matters if someone's genuine, but in terms of whether or not they're right or wrong, like, what is within the thing?
out because I think that it's important somewhere that has a lot of thought behind it. So interface multi art reconstruction technology MSAT. Plasmoids are donut or toroidal shaped clusters of net protons or net electrons that, once captured and placed into toroidal orbit, that is, going in a spiral, but basically an infinity symbol, as a toroid being a donut or a collapsed sphere, so are capable of absorbing, storing and releasing enormous amounts of energy present within their self-generated and structured electromagnetic containment field. So basically these entities produce their own package. So you don't have to build a battery, a lead acid battery, you don't have to build the plastic casing for it because they build their own casing and they confine themselves within their own electromagnetic field. Now, this means that I just wanted to give the audience some concept. So a normal battery, say in car battery, is has its energy density is 100.
Some concept, dude. We are looking to know what the fuck you're talking about. Some concept is already past. That was taken care of.
Times less than the energy density
I'm sorry to be rude. It's just like
in diesel. That's why we shouldn't get rid of diesel. So it's 100 times less energy density. So in the same way, we want to compare the same battery. If you imagine that size battery, you know, you're talking about millions of times more energy, not 100 times more energy, millions of times more energy that these plasmoids are capable to store in the same volume as you could store it in a battery.
store.
So it's 100th of that volume of a battery, that diesel 100.
Store's tricky. I was thinking it was just generating and then like emitting and then being used on the fly, which not as tricky. Store, that makes me also doubt what he's saying. Because why? Like, it's not a battery. He's saying it's a battery, pretty much. Alright, we'll see. We'll see. I really doubt it. I really doubt what he's saying now. Just because he's saying it's stored in the plasmoids.
To equal the storage capacity. So if you think about you know, 1 litre container and 100th of that to equal the same amount of energy in a battery, I think you'll get the metric by which you can make sensible decisions about whether to use an MSAT battery or whether to use a normal car battery. So basically here, plasmoids in effect function as an atomic battery that can be self-charging due to its ability to convert matter to available clean energy. And that is that basically the plasmoids, through their structure, through their black hole, can suck in you know, hydrogen, pull it apart, and put the energy
Through their black hole. I mean, you're just throwing words in.
into orbit that it can contain. So
Without, like, I guess he does say as above, so below, but he really doesn't talk about black holes enough to be saying through their black hole and moving on.
basically, plasmoids by the unique geometry cause a constant
I'm sorry, brother, if I may call you that after being an asshole for hours.
electromagnetic containment field to generate a zero-point naturally and causally, without much effort, have the ability to convert the nuclear mass of protium atoms into energy. The plasmoid unification model, PUM, posits that plasmoids are epoch-making and that knowledge of them
Just straight reading it.
has been hidden in plain sight for centuries. This PUM slide rule reveals the algorithmic relationships between life's elements critical to mankind's existence.
I do that too. I write words I can't say sometimes. Algorithmic. I mean, that's a little surprising. You couldn't say that one, but hey. I'm just like, did he even write this?
It starts with protium H, which has a melting point of minus 259.2 as the most abundant element in our solar system. Protium determines the 25,920 great year frequency of
I was literally thinking, oh, he must have practiced this. He's reading it pretty well.
the solar system, which is shown in this diagram.
Like, I wouldn't be able to read this so well. Oh, never mind.
Frequencies of all other elements can be then calculated when 25,920 years is reduced from years to days, hours and seconds. The PUM is evidence that the universe is an intelligent design. That design is in perfect octave harmonic resonance with itself. Therefore, all creation from galaxies to planets, elements, all resonate in unison with a collective chord as above so below. This is
Celsius is not like, if anyone's an engineers out there, you know Kelvin is where like everything is. Celsius is not a technical temperature measure. Like, we use it, we talk in it, but it's not really as technical as speaking in absolute terms of Kelvin. So, like, using Celsius here, really, he should be using, like, if I Google melting points of protium, it might say Celsius, but like Kelvin. Kelvin. Because this is like technical. It's kind of like the meter versus the foot. Like, yes, we use feet, but it's fucking ridiculous in some ways versus the meter. Or like Fahrenheit versus, even Fahrenheit versus Celsius. Celsius is more technical, but Kelvin is like the technical temperature measure. So I really don't care what Celsius melting point something has in a minus. Like, just that it is minus kind of gives away that he's just selecting the scale that because it matches. Like, what he should have selected for hydrogen, for protium, is probably more 13.957 Kelvin, to be honest. I'm just saying. Let's see. What is that in Celsius? 193. Let's see how 259. I mean, it is. He is at least basically correct with the number, which is good. I mean, maybe it's possible. Again, like, Celsius does have some more technical aspects to it than Fahrenheit does, so maybe it's more like in line with the resonance of the cosmos to use Celsius in some instances, but I would say Kelvin 100% is like the only way that would make sense.
interconnected with an energy web, the 24 components and laws of which are all based and governed on the same 16-sector torus plasmoid precepts shown. The concepts and ruling principles of the PUM can and have been applied to make energy to matter and matter to energy conversions. When applied to modern hydrocarbon-powered internal combustion engines, PUM technology removes source toxic waste products and increases the engine power output by transforming waste energy back into fuel. That's going back to the fact that internal combustion engines are only 34% energy efficient, which means that we're simply recovering out of our $3, instead of just spending $1 moving the car and wasting the heat and energy in other forms, friction. Instead of wasting that, we recover $1, and that basically means that you can go twice as far on the same amount of petrol, or with a coal plant that can produce twice as much electricity for the same amount of coal. So basically, we're here, plasmoids employed in conjunction with plasmoid toroidal enclosure turbine, which is a Vajra, provide a new novel matter to energy and energy matter propulsion device for water, land, air and space travel. So basically this is the end of this section, but to wrap it up, the question that's been asked is, what is the relationship between sacred geometry and this technology? And my answer is that plasmoids are an embodiment of all sacred geometry. In the plasmoid and in the plasmoid unification model and in the Vajra turbine, the implosive turbine, it is sacred geometry. So by throwing out straight to geometry as being sort of some scribblings on a rock by some ancient, ignorant, past civilization, one has to come to the realization that that sacred knowledge.
I gotta point out, like, it doesn't matter what people think. Yeah, sacred geometry is true. We don't need to, like, deal with people's lack of understanding when presenting the truth to them, if it is the case.
Was sacred for a reason. That is sacred. Do not touch it. Do not change it. It is sacred. Because if we lose a civilization, which, you know, I come from a lost civilization. I'm a Tasmanian Aboriginal, 25%, but wiped out. So you can wipe out Tasmania. Europeans came and wiped out a whole indigenous race. So where are the records? You know, where is everything? You can be wiped out. So, and, you know, the fact that comets regularly hit the planet, and the fact we got dents to prove it, and the fact anyone looking at the moon.
No, 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 no. Don't. Big no, dude. Expanding Earth caused the impacts, not impacts as traditionally interpreted. I've well established that.
You can see that it's pockmarked.
Sorry, you gotta watch my videos if you don't know what I'm talking about. Look for non-random distribution of impact craters, anything to do with the KT boundary, more than an impact around the world, those two videos, and just see, like, and more, just the totality of my work. I mean, just, like, I'm not on the second lecture, though. I'm on probably, like, my 500th video, almost. And they're all kind of, at this point, like, hey, dudes, what do you want from me?
Not a spot on the moon, really, that hadn't been hit. So you've got to take those realizations into account. We've lost this information. The model of the elements, as Einstein and Tesla said, the person that creates this model of the elements, and I might go just back up to that. Oh no, sorry, we've got one more slide to go, but I'll go from this to that. This is the model of the elements. Each one of these sections will go down now to the index, and we'll show you that each one of those sections is clearly outlined. There's 24 sections, as in the 24 hours of the day, and it covers everything knowable. As the Sanskrit text says, when the cause of all causes is known, then everything knowable is known, and nothing remains unknown. That is, everything knowable here is known. You go back to the other diagram, because it's one thing observing things, and if you go back to the first diagram here, then there is everything is reconciled. That everything that appeared to be disparate, from sound and colour to elements to crystal form, is no longer disparate. So, and that means that once you have that knowledge, then you can calculate the resonant frequency of all things. So, and so therefore, you know, we'll go on to the last slide here so I can show you what's next on our sequence to the last slide. Thank you. So the next talk will be on plasmoid tech.
He really needs one of those pointer things for this.
Holy Grail of power.
That clicks. I really hate it when people have to say next slide, next slide, next slide. It's like dead. Feels bad. I would hate to be in that circumstance. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, how am I gonna say it this time? Next slide, please. Like, come on, dude. Like, maybe we vibing. You feeling me, right? Next slide. You didn't feel that one. You didn't feel the next slide vibe. Shoot.
This is what we've just shown in this section. Section number 2. We'll go on in section number 3.
Okay.
That we can apply that knowledge to create, using the plasmoid to create an ionized path between the Earth and the ionosphere are therefore having 24 hours of unlimited power, 24 hours a day. And so that will be the next slide. So this poster here, and this is separated in parts, but this is the top part of the poster, and the second slide is split into two, which is the bottom part of the poster. So basically you can get that on randallcarlson.com and on HowTube, and on obviously the website, which is Strike Foundation .earth, and you can also, because it's open source, you can also, everyone's free to use that without permission. And the reason that we've copyrighted it is, for the Strike Foundation, is simply so that no one else can copyright it and then claim it's theirs and then stop the distribution. So just to explain that, we're having workarounds to try and keep this information public, and not for the use of people that would disempower the planet, but for people who would empower the planet, both on a on a planet scale and also an individual scale, that it's for every individual on the planet, not for somebody to step in between the information and the individual to make money. Thank you.
All right, so not persuaded. I mean, I think it's interesting. I will admit it's an interesting appearance, but there's a lot of interest. Alternative periodic tables. There's a lot of interesting alternative periodic tables. Like this one. This one I think is captures some like nuances that one probably does not. Like he said he probably stops before this because it gets kind of out of sync when it goes to 18 or whatever additional elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I think it's 8. I feel like it's 18. But I can't even remember. Let's see. This is only 10. Silly me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 14. Does that work well with this thing? R A C L R L A L U. What the fuck? Are these even elements? There it is. AC. LR. 80, so 89 through 103. He just kind of plops them all together. RF. XYZ. Okay, we got H1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So it jumps up. 19, 20, 21, 19, 20, okay, 21. So it does look like it fits well back into the xenon there. Potassium, calcium. SC, cobalt. He just jumps titanium, vanadium, chromium, manganese, iron. Literally just jumps them. Not nowhere to be seen, dudes. Yeah, I don't see iron anywhere. I literally don't see iron. I'm not saying every element needs to be here, but iron is pretty important, like, historically, like, it's a pretty important element in terms of, like, where things start to go out of balance, like supernova wise and things of that nature. Like, it's a pretty important element. So to not have it even in this at all, is it here? LA to LU. 57, like it's not there. 22 to 26 just seem to be missing entirely. What the? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I just don't see it. Let's go back to some alternative periodic tables. There's some incredible ones that I think are quite interesting and worth discussing, like, for sure. I don't remember though. Like the 3D ones, kind of like this. That I saw someone do it, like draped upward. That one was I was vibing with. It's like, yeah, that's probably true. More so than the two-dimensional depiction. Like, he really needs a third dimension. It really makes me think, like, maybe there's something to this. Maybe not exactly this, but again, part of me to be like, well, it really makes me think of chakras, like the 0 point being like the center of a shallogram, and having really like ridges like a shallogram, like it would be beneficial to shape it like this. I guess like this, like having a peak and then spiraling down with like ridges. Like this kind of shape is probably the best way. If we're going to draw it in the spiral, like it would be useful to capture it in another dimension like that. Like it probably just doesn't sufficiently capture it in 2 dimensions, more odds are. And really is beneficial to have it in a 3-dimensional depiction of how it is, but maybe it becomes much more like this, where like maybe these are like neutrons. Each of the like rid bumps are like neutrons, maybe, where each of the little nooks between act as maybe channels outward as like a proton. I don't know, just contemplating. Or sometimes they'll have like a single channel branch into 2 channels, like here, like almost as if like a single neutron is able to support 2 protons. Like if we look through this structure, these are just all of the stable isotopes from elements 1 to 20. And I just kind of drew put a dot where the neutrons of this periodic table of currents, like once I established a pattern and like I just took the pattern outward, I noticed that stable proton or stable neutron numbers like this one tend to repeat, like especially more noticeable like here. Like there's only one stable phosphorus element and it has a like balanced number of neutrons seemingly, as so does like these are the same number of neutrons repeated over and over, but then another neutron's added. It's like this number of neutrons can support the addition of one and then two more like channels for current to flow in that effectively is a proton energetically, like in a system that is much more like a shallogram type of structure, ammonite type of structure. But then like it adds a new one, but it's not stable, so it only like does it within the sulfur plus another neutron, sulfur again plus another neutron, plus another neutron, actually two neutrons here. There's no stable one with like this one, or with only one of these at the end. It just jumped right to a stable tail pretty much. And then this pattern repeats again here, and again here, and again here, so that the same 20 neutron structure that's seemingly stable. Like if this pattern continues, it seems to produce stable balances of the mounds that then repeat more frequently than the ones that are more like unbalanced and less unstable. Like this one does not repeat. This one does not repeat. Repeat, 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 repeat. The only ones that repeat is this one that's out of balance, but it's so early that it's almost like it's because it's so early that it just is able to hold together still, even out of balance a bit. But down here, it just uses it almost as like a pivot point, like a steps past it. Only silicon's stable at 15 neutrons because it has a certain amount of current flowing through that is representative of the number of protons, because the protons are basically channels for the current to flow. So maybe there's something like that. Anyway, okay. That's my thoughts on this second video of 15. We'll see how far I make it, honestly. This was not persuasive, and really, considering it was not the introduction anymore, and it really probably is the totality of when he's going to talk about that in any rigorous technical way whatsoever, to try to attempt to address, like, explaining it. Like, at this point, it's going to have been explained here, and anytime it shows up, it's just going to show up. It's not going to be with more elaboration on why it is so, because it's already explained, even though for sure insufficient. Alright, peace out till the next one. See you guys. Thanks for hanging out and watching, listen to me be me. Peace.